This is Dateline, News and Conversation. Today, we're going to continue our study of and discussion of a very important book. My friend Blaž Kavčič is returning. He's the author of the book. And we're going to talk about the significance of the book. I want to review quickly the 4 basic deadly dogmas of globalism. And for those of you who don't recall, the title of the book is How We Will Survive and Thrive, Leaving Predatory Globalism for Sovereign Humanism. Blaz, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Regis. It's a pleasure to be on your channel again.
Well, I've learned so much from you, and I think everybody who's been watching these segments have also learned. As I mentioned in the opening, let's begin with basically an overview of the book, why you wrote it, why it's important.
Okay, and please, Regis, feel free to interject anytime you feel it might be useful for our viewers. So today is our 4th meeting, and we are going to discuss the final chapter of our book, How We Will Survive and Thrive. Before we get to the questions of what to do and how to do it, we need to make an assessment of how close we are regarding the question, what is going on? And I mean, really, what is going on? It sounds very simple, but everyday life and events, understanding ordinary people have, the prevailing narratives of the people with influence demonstrate, we are far from common understanding of what is really going on, what is good for us, what is not good for us, what is behind the events, what are the causes, what are the consequences. After 4 years of official declaration of the war against humanity and nature, even the finest alternative voices are not clear in defining what is going on. Dr. Klaus Schwab has written a book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. And it's a kind of a Hitler's Mein Kampf. Everything is written in there. But in 1941, things were more brutally clear than today. No one then could overlook the Nazis with tanks, airplanes, machine guns, polished uniforms. To all occupied nations, it seemed like an ultimate, eternal force, where any resistance was futile and unrealistic. And yet people said no. In Slovenia, for instance, then part of the dismembered kingdom of Yugoslavia, already in April 1941, a liberation front was organized, consisting of 15 citizens' movements, from communists to Christian socialists, sports and youth organizations. Of course, the strongest political parties were not involved in the Liberation Front. And at that time, program and leadership was agreed upon. Less than a year later, there was first frontal confrontation on the territory of occupied Europe with Hitler's war machine. The famous Battle of Dražgoše, which took 3 days in January 1942. How about today? The mainstream media are nothing but military propagandistic loudspeakers of controlling powers. How about the alternative media? Our supposed friends with millions of followers on social media. Most prominent pundits on alternative media are talking about the West against the rest. Is it really the prevailing controversy of today? Is it the most important question, the most important problem? Speaking of West and East in globalized modern world is anyway really delusional. For hundreds of years, globalizing controlling powers have been developing institutions and networks outside the constitutional ones. Consequently, the same controlling power is behind the forces involved in kinetic wars like Ukraine and Israel. And it is nothing new. It is a common knowledge that during the World War II, the same corporations were behind the United States and German war machines. It is less known how close the cooperation in nuclear technologies was between United States and Soviet institutes during the Cold War. Gaza today. Our feelings are on the side of Palestinians who are treated as lesser people, poisoned, robbed, killed, and have been for decades. The question is why nobody of gravitas, as far as I can see, exposes the fundamental cause of the Palestinian problem. It is common knowledge, but not exposed enough, that idea of Israel, initiated in 1917 by Lord Arthur James Balfour. Well, this idea is an imperial concept based on a false premise. The false premise being that the Jewish people need a state of their own in order not to be mistreated by others. Instead of insisting that all citizens should be equal in every civilized country, identity politics is so often applied and tensions among the people creating. British Empire also had other pragmatic reasons for the support of the Jewish militants like Hagan fighting against the Ottoman Empire, but for propagandistic reasons, protection of Jews sounded convincing. So again, instead of saying we are all equal, Jewish people are the same as all the other people, nobody is special in a positive and negative way, the identity politics has been applied. And then there was a period of collaboration of Zionist organizations and Nazis to send the Jews from Germany to Palestine. So the Jews were during the history often mistreated, it's a fact, then positively discriminated, then sacrificed again. But similar thing was happening and is happening with the African Americans and Indians, for instance. Enslaving them, abusing them, exploiting them, and once of the sudden exposing them in a perverse way and making other groups in a society hate the supposedly protected groups. Identity politics is one of the main weapons of global imperialism. Why are the main causes of social controversies not presented in a meaningful, systemic way? What is the main controversy of today? It is not East and West. As I and my colleagues see it, the main controversy is between the paradigm of natural and humanistic against the transhumanistic and technocratic. This is the main controversy of today. The neocons as a sole boogeyman, the capitalism versus socialism, the West against the BRICS are probably sounding well, are partially correct, but they sound dramatic, but in fact they are obfuscations. In one word, it's about globalism. Yes or no, and there are no compromises, just many tricks. So I will try to explain why I personally and people around me think we have something useful to contribute in understanding what is really going on in the world today. And we are trying to contribute it because we are not seeing any other group or individuals of gravitas, with the exception of channels like yours, for instance, looking for real truth, for the real causes behind the events that are happening. Now, what we can bring to the table is a historical experience of the people living on a very turbulent territory, where on a geographically limited space, a lot of world relevant things were happening and are happening. This is a space between Venetian black nobility, Habsburgs, Ottoman Empire, Russian Empire, where Nikola Tesla was born, where World War I was initiated by the Sarajevo assassination, where people rose up in March 1941 against the pact of Yugoslav kingdom with Hitler, and where resistance later blocked German divisions which would otherwise engage on the Eastern Front against the Soviet forces. After the end of World War II, Yugoslavia was a special case, something in between, not east, not west, not north, not south. In 1948, Tito, president of Yugoslavia then, distanced himself from Stalin and Stalinism. He led Yugoslavia in kind of more and more market-oriented socialism, later developed into self-management system. Life was relatively good for most citizens. Standard of living was progressing. Industry developed, often in cooperation with Western companies. Traveling was free. There were several attempts to assassinate Tito by the Soviets and by the West. Nevertheless, he managed to initiate with Nasser and Nehru very promising and growing non-aligned movement. What is most important for our discussion is that Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was actually a test lab for technocratic approach. So Socialist Yugoslavia was a test laboratory for what is happening today. Documents have been revealed that show very intensive involvement of most influential American economist John Galbraith in developing a very complex and entropic self-management system in Yugoslavia, where in theory everything was decided by the working people, but in reality it was all manipulated from the communist technocracy, to a large extent via military intelligence services, KOS and KOG. John Galbraith was a member of historically strongest and devastating triad: Kissinger, Kahn, Galbraith. This is why we can well understand the narrative and substance of Great Reset concepts of DAO, meaning decentralized autonomous organizations, cooperatives, social responsibility, equality, resilience, stakeholdership, sustainability, and so on. These are all nicely sounding narratives, but in fact leading to misery and destruction. Even the destruction of Yugoslavia, well described, for instance, by William Engdahl, was another experiment carried out by the global deep state via the USA. For us, the test lab rats we were, it was not clear why out of the sudden Kosovo miners were on strike, why NGOs were demanding rights for the miners in Kosovo, while media were reporting Kosovars raping Serbian women, why in Slovenia everything connected to resistance against Nazis and collaborators during World War II started to be painted as communist atrocities. Even the case of Slobodan Milosevic was very instructive. He started a Serbian banker prodigy trained in the US, connected to Rothschilds. But later he developed some weird nationalist concept and started to be demonized by the West. He died as a prisoner in Hague. Once peaceful Yugoslavia, operating under the slogan of fraternity and unity, became a slaughterhouse. More than 150,000 people were killed and millions had their lives ruined. And I still remember that time the president of European Parliament, Schulz from Germany, said, Europe is a guarantee for peace, as if he didn't notice the hundreds of people, thousands of people killed. It's, so this is what gives us some perspective and understanding of events during last decades, and leads us to more skeptical view on the present ruling of ICJ also regarding genocide perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinians. We welcome the decision, but wish to point out that even the most optimistic scenarios do not bring quick and lasting solution, not for the Palestinians, not for Yemenis, not for Syrians, not for other suffering people, and not for the rest of us who might be at present much better off than Palestinians, but are in the same boat with them. It's just a matter of time. Why? Because nothing has changed for the better regarding the governance of the world. All national budgets around the world are dominated by the globalist controllers and are being pumped up with military items, all to be used against the people and the planet. Can we really believe that asking for understanding and mercy in institutions like billionaire Parliament of the United States, unelected technocracy managing European Union, World Bank, United Nations, is going to change the direction of travel? We should reject intensive attempts to imagine controlling powers, so powers that are really behind, really pulling the strings, as something mystical, something eternal, supernatural, divine, satanic, or romantic, which are the trends. It is about controlling the budgets. It's about controlling the budgets. The text of the finest philosophers have never directly influenced the decisions of controlling powers. Here it's maybe useful to reread Machiavelli, who said something, and I'm paraphrasing. I apologize, and I study philosophers of antiquity very intensively and so on. He was very, very scholarly, Machiavelli, but he said, but the real life is different. And in my book, Il Principe, the Emperor, he said, I'm writing about how things really are, how the technology of power works. So, of course, we need to follow the science, the philosophers, but we should also understand who is really formulating and implementing the decisions that are crucial for our lives. People who preach today spirituality, forces of light, forces of good, should not forget that our spirituality is connected to our material bodies here and now. Each of us only has one life, as we know it. If we want to live well, spiritually and bodily, we need clean air and water, healthy food, clothing, housing, energy, all material things. No wonder globalist propagandists preach forgetting about material preconditions of living here and now. So, Regis, I thought this wrap-up might be useful for us and for our viewers to check where we are in understanding what is really going on before we say a few concluding words about what to do and how to do it. Now, do you have any questions or remarks or proposals?
No. I'm really grateful. It's been very beneficial to listen to your very clear and concise overview of what is going on. Many people, including myself, have some understanding of what is really going on, and that is the globalist agenda. You can look at everything from the war in Ukraine to the war between Israel and Hamas. You can look anywhere else in the world, and you can look throughout history, and you can see the same power control everywhere. And it's whoever controls the money controls the government. I forget who it was that said, I don't care who gets elected. I care who controls the money. I think you made that very clear. So
I think it was by David Rockefeller or Nelson Rockefeller. I think this
one of those Rockefellers, right?
Yes,
Who knew a lot about money and a lot about power.
Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to add was the thing that I've been trying to understand and focus on several of my shows is this whole idea that the agenda is to destroy what's left of our humanity. It's a question of humanity, as you said, versus transhumanism and technocracy. And when we look around the world, when I do anyway, I see all of the technological advances that are promoted as development and helpful and beneficial, but which really are changing who we are and how we think and how we're controlled. So this has been a fascinating discussion, these last sessions of your book. What I would like you to do now is, well, how do we do it? How do we survive and thrive in this world against these incredibly powerful forces?
Okay, let's make a step forward. Now, the problematic things of last few years is that whenever we in certain groups start approaching the solutions part, people start to jump away. And one of the most important things is what you touched with your thoughts just now. I came to the conclusion that we need to clarify our views and acquire we cannot think about solutions without correct positioning of the most important phenomena of modern human society. There are many, but let me expose few most important ones. One is war. Another one is religion. Another one is technology. And those categories only exist in human society and are used to manipulate human society from the very start. Now, life is never black and white. Western civilization has been developing throughout last 500 years under the philosophy from the background, which is close to Jesuit view on things. I see Jesuits in good and in bad as a philosophical center of centers. So we have to admit that this civilization, the European, was a very progressive one. A lot of sacrifice, but a lot of power of development, a lot of innovation. So we should always study again and again from Confucius on, and even before Confucius, how things were developing, and not trying to adopt a black and white position. But one thing is black and white today. If we continue the direction of the human society we are in, the human society will stop to exist in a form in which approximately it is today, because it's going in a wrong way, in exponential way. I would not like to digress too much, but we have been during one of our discussions, we have been discussing the three functions: the individual, natural, the natural cumulative, and the exponential, the financial function. And it's interesting that wise people in past have also been trying to chart these main trends, like also Robert Malthus, who charted two conflicting functions. One he thought was arithmetic, and according to him, this was the potential growth of agricultural production. And another one he saw as geometric, as exponential, growing very fast, and it was the population. And he had some supporting facts, and he was correct on some of the findings, and he was wrong on otherwise. And he was debating it with Godwin, the more liberal thinker, anarchist, liberal anarchist, who was a believer in infinite potential of technology progress, and who saw no limitations. And they were both wrong, but they also both had some correct points. Now, if we take a realistic view, and for instance, when I looked the charts for Slovenia, I must say, yes, it was the population of Slovenia about 200 years ago was about 1 million, and then it was slowly growing. It reached 2 million some 20 years ago. Now it has stabilized and is even going down a little bit. Whereas agricultural production and industrial production have been growing in a stable way. So I remind all of us again on the findings of French sociologist Emmanuel Todd, who said that the population control is sort of self-regulating social mechanism, whereas by uplifting the living standards and education of people, the growth of population stabilizes, goes down. And this is the way we should look at the global trends. Now, it's all perversely, wrongly now presented. That's why I'm bringing it again. These functions are very important. So what about war first? I listen to pundits like Scott Ritter, like Mersheimer, and it's all for me very instructive, very informative. And those people are not only experts in their fields. I also feel in them the humanistic approach. But there is too much of picturing war conflicts as conflicts among people, as if people quarreled, and now we have to find a settlement between the angry Russians and angry Ukrainians, and angry Jewish, Israelis, and Palestinians. No, it can't be. It's not a conflict of people. It's not a conflict of nations. Wars have to be understood as obligatory component of the paradigm which controls us, which is neoliberal paradigm now trying to make step forward into transhumanistic technocracy. Wars are necessary for the fictitious powering of the exponential growth of financial markets. As long as we have Wall Street, we will have wars and terrorism. And okay, anybody can criticize me. How can we imagine a solution without Wall Street? Okay, yeah, it's a problem, complicated, but Wall Street is a deadlier institution than Pentagon. So that's why our book is devoted to also proposing a model of governing of society which is not based on fictitious growth of financial capital. Back to wars. Wars are not conflict of nations. Wars have always been rackets, as Smedley Butler, the general, correctly wrote many years ago. Each war is a racket, and these rackets are necessary to fuel the financial aspirations of the predatory, let's call them elites, parasitic caste on the top. And this crisis of the world, now we have to also, this is also another question, and I would not like to digress, but for some people it would be useful first to say or to clarify, are we in an existential crisis or not? The world, the planet. Or we can count on present powers to normalize situation for the benefit of the humanity. It's a fair question. I think that only one will survive. Only one group. 99% of ordinary people, or the parasitic caste of less than 1%. And it's not our proposal, people's proposal, or our choice. And it's not necessary. We have during the last 100 years, we have reached the level of technologies that can assure decent, harmonic life for everybody, and for those who perform more and better, more. So, I'm not proposing any mechanistic, communistic idea, just something fair for the people. So wars are necessary component of present paradigm, and if we want to eliminate war and achieve peace, we have to change the governance systems of the world. And we can never achieve that top down. So we can never count on the global elites to come up with better solutions, because it would eliminate them. The solutions will start to function one by one state by another state. Will it collapse first in Germany or in France or in some other country or maybe in the States? But those systems will have to start falling down. As long as United States are used as a bludgeon of the globalist puppet masters from behind, it's no good life for Americans. Now, so this is about war. Then about the religion. Religion is used as a deadly weapon for hundreds of years. And I respect religion. I think people simply cannot live without religion. But we should also respect the already achieved levels of freedoms, which, among others, the UN Charter and a lot of constitutions stipulate freedom of faith. Freedom of faith. So no religion has right to impose itself on others. And there is a fact which we simply cannot see. This is that religions are many. Religions are many. And most of the wars are fought on the basis of one religion reserving itself the right to decide about all other. Well, theologians, you have studied the subject in depth, define some 12,000 religions. Okay, there is a dozen most important ones today in the world. 3 Abrahamic religions, which are totally conflicting among themselves regarding the main definitions of gods and eternity and so on. But there is a lot of good in most of the religions, if we want to take the good messages out and use them for the benefit of the people. It can be done, of course, but it is so easily manipulated. So if we study the religion based on Durkheim or Spinoza and so on, yes, of course, there are important messages to be taken. But of course, we have to be fair and admit that religions are always misused as a weapon, and this has to be eliminated. If we revert just shortly back to Israel, based on Jewish understanding of the Old Testament, the Orthodox Jews have defined themselves as Übermensch, as the chosen people, and the others are to be destroyed. The Amalek statements by Netanyahu and so on. But you can hear similar statements also by big names representing other religions. Religious freedom is very important one, and correct positioning of religion. And we have to be honest and say, no main religion of the world of today, no Vatican, no Orthodox Church, no Islamic Church, nor Jewish Church has adopted a critical view on globalism, and it has been proven during the COVID era, which is still lasting. So it has been preached by the Catholic Church and by other churches. Wear a mask, get vaccinated. And now we can come back to the 4 deadly globalist dogmas we write about in this book. If people in public life do not position themselves against the most important categories of the human society today, they cannot be bearers of solutions. They are parts of the problem. And it means understanding what is democracy, understanding what is money, understanding what is CO2, and understanding what is virus. There is science, independent science available if we want to apply it. So religion is extremely important, and correct positioning of religion within the constitutions of national states is of utmost importance. We don't want to have theocracies, or do we? Are we ready to understand that no religion tolerates democracy? All main religions rely on some higher power, not us, the people. And furthermore, rely on the premise that some people are entitled to explain to everybody else what the gods want. And it's a guarantee for catastrophe. With full respect of the role of religion as a cultural, indispensable segment of society, of our individual spirituality, we have to be careful how religions are manipulated, used as identity weapon, are inflaming people's feelings and causing wars. So, wars, religion, and the third category, which maybe we should mention, and you have touched it already, is technology. No technology can solve problems caused by wrong social relations. Even the best technologies can be and are misused. And technologies are not falling from the heaven on the earth automatically. Technologies are developed by us, the people. And only those technologies are developed which are financed, which get investment. So we are back to social governance. Who takes decisions? And then we, of course, most of the technologies can be used then in a positive way or in a negative way. And I have personally been working for decades in high-tech sectors. So I'm personally very much in favor of technologies, but one thing regarding technology has to be clearly said, and this is that the globalist parasitic caste is taking care of the technology involvement in such a way that we, the people, get attracted by the pleasant sides of technologies, by the positive sides, but the poison is waiting behind as a next step. And this is true for all technologies. And the problem of last decades is that when I was starting to speak publicly, critically about the social trends, as soon as one opens his mouth and says something, it should be better for the people and technology should serve people, there is already agents of globalists shouting, you are Marxist, you are a ludist, without, of course, knowing what is Marxism, what are the good things about Marxism, what are bad things about Marxism, what really is ludism. They are just trained to criticize any idea of things should be used for the benefit of mankind and nature. So technology is not something automatic. Technology only happens in human society. Technology is based on investment. Investment is based on purchasing power taken from the people of the planet and used and channeled by the parasitic elite. And here about the let's say basic architecture of society. I'm no friend of anarchistic views. I think that anarchists have historically had good criticism of the negative things of the social orders and consequences. Yes, they have contributed valid criticisms from Kropotkin, Godwin, and so on. But they have never proposed a working solution. So we have to think of architecture of a harmonically working society more in terms of Karl Polanyi and thinkers close to him. Although also Karl Polanyi was instrumentalized in a wrong way during last years, but his work remains valid. So technologies should be understood as means to better life and easier work of people. And it can only be achieved if we define a different governance. And now maybe we should slowly now come to the concluding thoughts on what to do and how to achieve it. But okay, I have been now a little bit commenting on some most important questions you have raised, Regis, and which are also reflecting some of the discussions taking place in the world today. You have any remarks or additional questions?
Well, I very much appreciated your analysis. I was scribbling notes throughout the whole thing. I absolutely appreciated how you described war, religion, and technology. They're all used to control us, and you have to look behind all of it. And it's money, it's finance, it's the globalists, it's the trillionaires, not the billionaires. It's those with trillions of dollars. Some of them have names. So I appreciated that. But the thought that went through my mind was, Blaz, those in power are ruthless. There's no empathy, not a drop of empathy in their bodies, in their minds. And what they have done to date is to crush all resistance that comes from the people, comes from labor movements, comes from unions, comes from wherever it comes from, peace groups. they've crushed them. And, the closest I think I ever came to the hope for a solution was the Occupy movement. And I took part in that. And I think it was criticized for having no central organization, but they really believed in the power of the people. And that was one of the slogans, power to the people. And yet, after about 10 months, power in the hands of Barack Hussein Obama on one weekend crushed it with the police and military across the country. It was dead. So before you go into this last part, and we'll take as long as it takes, I hope you're going to provide some kind of insight into what the globalists are going to do, and I hope what we have to do to overcome it. So I turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Good thinking, Regis. And you have really not only been active in in media, but also personally engaged in the fight for good. Now, this fight for, I have also been in similar situation as you have described, and maybe sometimes naive. I was also involved in Green Party for a certain period of time, and then now I realize how instrumentalized was Green movement from the very beginning, but not all was clear at the very beginning. Similar with Occupy movement, there was, I would say, 90% of the people were organic, decent, free thinkers. But it's enough to have few manipulators. Now, for Slovenia, we have prepared with my friends a list of controlled opposition, which comprised between 150 and 200 people. And I have worked with most of them in the last period. In all these yoga movements and neuro-linguistic programmers and fighters for natural immunity and against vaccination and for natural humanistic schooling of children. It's a lot of positive ideas. There are hundreds of people who were motivated in different ways, and they are more dangerous than the official powers for whom we know that they are quisling governments and so on. And we are now in a phase where these networks of people, well, there is a lot of positive things, but all has been instrumentalized. So if we now look back at the peace movements and anti-nuclear power movement and again movement against the Vietnam War and yellow vests in France and Canadian truckers and so on. Yeah, of course, there is a lot of good things going on, but we have to be careful because all of this is being instrumentalized, if not from the beginning, that it gets infiltrated. And actually, it has been well described by Howard Zinn in history, People's History of United States, how at the beginning of the previous century, workers' unions were either crushed, a lot of people were killed, or killed or bribed. So we have to understand that during the last 100 years, it has been an intensive offensive of global forces from behind to take control of all main flows within the human society. Some of them we describe in our book, meaning Rockefeller's control of energy, of medicine, of money, of food, of technology, academy. So all these main flows have been gradually put under globalist control. And it's sometimes not so clear picture because there are conflicting powers, and it's also not completely monolithic, everything. But the direction of travel is clear. It is the full spectrum dominance and the synthetic instead of natural. Why? Because only under such circumstances they can remain in power. Parasitic caste. They cannot remain in power if people would continue to develop sound critical thinking and demand what they deserve. So this is the situation we have now. So all these main processes are being monopolized, taken under control, and there is no global solution. Now, if you start speaking about the solutions, we have to come to some facts. That's why I have described in the beginning a little bit the history of our nation, of this part of Europe, which has certain combination of mentalities and experience and so on, which might be useful for the people around the world to think about them. Now, we should first decline any solutions coming from the top, global top. And we have to work with the people within the organizational level, which is the most realistic one. And it is not the local community of 5,000 people. And it is not the union of states like United States or European Union. It is the national state. National states theoretically and constitutionally at least control the budgets. And as long as political parties control budgets, the centralized big money controls the budgets of every and each country. Not maybe every step in the first moment, but step by step, definitely. So this is the problem. So controlled opposition or collaborators of the occupying forces. Now, it is an interesting question. Are we occupied or are we not occupied? You mentioned occupied movement. Yeah, it's not only, I mean, it was maybe a little bit really narrow view to say we will occupy Wall Street. Okay, yeah, as a partial step, yes, but you have to have a complete program to dismantle the Beltway mafia and to establish a real democracy in each federal state of United States. If we speak about United States, nothing can come from the top as it is. So the top will have to be removed. And what the idea I did not quite finish is that some state functioning, of course, is necessary. Maybe we shouldn't call it government. It's more executive power of the people of the country. But without, like in a family farm, it's not that everybody knows everything and everybody is entitled to everything. There has to be some sort of organization. And in order for us to survive, first we have to achieve, enlightenment of the people, which is going on, where you and I and our colleagues and friends and so on, we are trying to contribute. And we have to continue to do that. But the critical question is, do we have a group of 10 people in Russia, of 10 people in Slovenia, of 10 people in Maine, who would coordinate among themselves a program with a clear analysis, using our book as a blueprint, answering all the questions we are raising, maybe adding some other questions, maybe coming to better solutions, different solutions. So until we have 10 people in each of the national states, how can we expect from the general population to come up with solutions? They have nothing to follow. And even if we have 10 intelligent groups coming up with good ideas, if they are different among themselves, the power dissipates. Nothing will be achieved in confrontation with the militarily organized globalist powers, where there is no mistake. I mean, Ukraine war is no mistake, and it cannot. We shouldn't speak about how foolish they are and how incompetent they are. No, everything is running in ideal way. I mean, people are dying, budgets are rising, weaponry is being used, sold. For the globalists, everything is running perfectly well. And now, also in Russia, what is going to happen? The McNamara syndrome is what I'm afraid of. McNamara means making the war footing of the industry a permanent one. Instead of using national resources to manufacture things necessary for good life of the people, most of the countries of the world, including Russia, are using more and more resources to produce things for destruction, which is weaponry for destruction and control. So national states and national progressive elites is the critical element of what we have to do and how to do it. In Slovenia, we don't have 10 people. We have had already, and we have different groups, and we are cooperating and discussing and so on. But most of my colleagues from the beginnings of resistance against Corona dictatorship have found some other priorities in life, have been motivated to think and work in other directions. That's life. And when I speak to ordinary people, as long as they can lead decent lives, and life in Slovenia, for instance, is still for most of people relatively good, until the moment where you are pushed to, you need a surgeon, you need a surgery, you need a specialist, you are old, or you would like to have a well-paid job. Well, then you are on your own, and then you look for assistance, but there isn't any, because without organization, there is no solution. Maybe just a concluding thought, or a few concluding thoughts, not because we have. Should we continue for a few minutes, because we have already exceeded 1 hour, I see.
Absolutely, continue.
Okay, I'll make it short, and then we see if there is something which needs to be discussed later on. So there is today in the world enough independent science available, but if we want to survive and thrive, we have to apply the knowledge in a meaningful, contextual way, i.e., our interdisciplinary approach based on political philosophy, political economy, biology, climatology, anthropology, psychology, sociology. In short, what is the priority of what we want to achieve is reaffirmation of nation states serving their citizens, a radical deglobalization, and constitutionally based parliamentary democracies surpassing political parties. How to achieve it? Just to wrap up, we cannot do it without first program, second organization, and third leadership. And beware of collaborators of the enemy. This is it from my part today, Regis.
I want to thank you for all of that. You know, you just listed 3 conditions, and the third one was leadership. And this is the one that, for me, seems to be lacking. You know, you mentioned just in passing controlled opposition, important figures respected by people at large, spouting a message that is controlled by the globalist. And these same kinds of people, and I've experienced this, having been involved in the peace movement for many years, they've infiltrated. And they come in looking like, wow, I'm with you. But then they start objecting. They start, but. They start creating confusion. And I can tell you one thing. I have found the number one indicator of instrumentalization of influence has been money. And one George Soros has poured billions into groups all over the world and across the United States to control them, to create this social manipulation. So it's a big problem. I want to thank you for this, Blaz. This is not the last time we're going to meet. There's so much that I want to talk to you about. I want to discuss a number of these important issues to help people better understand what's going on. I think the way we've done this show has been in bits and pieces. So hopefully people could have time to think about things until the next time. And hopefully we're interested enough to come all the way through to this time. So I want to thank you for that. I think your book is fantastic. I'll put it in the description again. I hope that people around the world will buy it. And I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Agreed, Regis. Thank you very much, and keep on the good work. Thanks.